Well, hello, and welcome to my talk on designing to thrive. It takes more than content and desire. My name is Sasha BARAB. I am a professor of innovation and learning sciences at Arizona State University in the United States. My professorship lies in two schools. One is Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College of Education, and the other is the Future of Innovation in Society, which is a kind of bringing together of over 50 faculty who come from over 50 different disciplinary backgrounds, with the idea that if we're going to truly make progress on helping empower society to integrate innovation to create the futures that we want, that we need kind of a variety of disciplines, from lawyers to chemists to learning scientists, all engineers, all working on collective problems that take multiple disciplines to solve. And I'm also the director of the Center for Games and Impact. So today, I want to kind of jump into this idea that we're living in a turbulent time where people are feeling disconnected and are unable to activate their full potential. Yet at the same time, we as a society are better equipped than ever to connect people, match their needs, provide motivational structures, technical infrastructures, and deeply important, the supportive communities to sustain positive growth. But we're not really bringing these things together to kind of work on this. How do we help people grow to their full potential problem? In fact, one might argue that education is one of the last places that has really been revolutionized by what might be called the platform revolution. So for me, this idea of designing to thrive is kind of based on this assumption that personal growth requires more than content and desire. Unrealized potential is the norm, not the exception. Again, because we need more than content and desire, which we have plenty of to achieve what we will learn about as I call thrive. Some key assumptions are that people learn better when they're interested, curious, passionate, and engaged. And people grow when they feel safe, inspired, valued, and validated. Yet most growth platforms are designed to transmit expert content to isolated individuals, as if somehow the growth lives within the ideas and the innovation, not the efforts of the people doing the learning. So the kind of beats or sections to this talk, first I want to talk about what is thrive, as opposed to content consumption. Then I want to go into an invitational framework for learning, as opposed to an interventional one. Then kind of talk about that the magic is in the ecosystem integration and there's no technological fix. And then finally, time permitting, I'll kind of just share a little bit of how we've realized these ideas in our Thrivecast platform. So before I jump in, just some core assumptions is that learning is about creating value, not consuming content. That we need to think about the person as the innovator, not the user of innovation. And what they do with the content is the innovation. The technology is an amplifier, not a silver bullet. Intervention as invitation, not inserting solution. And that innovation is as much about integration, not as dissemination. We could say scaling as integration, not as dissemination. So the kind of first beat I want to get into is this idea of what is thrive, a new target for learning. I want to focus a little bit on creating value. I'm going to talk briefly about jobs to be done, but I'll return to that throughout the talk. And then I want to kind of push this notion that thriving is a team sport, not an individual venture. So very complicated page. Probably should have simplified it. I apologize. But I wanted to give you multiple examples. And so here's what kind of when we start thinking about content and what we're offering as educators, not as nouns about what we have, but as verbs about what users do, we start to think differently about our brand and about what it means to take and really empower learners. So Jason Fried has this very famous quote about, here's what our product can do versus here's what you can do with our product. They sound similar, but they're completely different approaches. So when Apple says, you know, our product as an MP3 player is our product is 1,000 songs in your pocket. very different statements. The idea that the Nest thermostat programs itself and pays for itself is more about what it does for you, but that's right on the edge. But then when you move into like Twinner, it's not really about what our brand is. It's about you and connecting with your friends and other fascinating people, getting the moment updates, the things that interest you, and watch events in real time from every angle. LinkedIn, be great at what you do. Evernote, remember everything. All of these are starting to switch from nouns about what our product is in terms of the bits and bytes to what it can do or who you can be with our product. And we'll kind of continue on that thought. And one of my favorite examples of from nouns to verbs is Nike. And part of it is their swoosh construct. The swoosh at its most fundamental level is not a Nike product. It's a kind of the epiphenomenon, or what is left behind when you wear Nike products, because it represents motion and speed. Again, it's not about what the product is, it's about what you get to experience as a result of wearing our product. When Intel switched from this idea that Intel inside to we power experiences, it was a strong move from what we are to what the customer gets to live. And then I love this commercial from Raymond James, which is kind of a very successful investment company. But when you watch this commercial, take notice of what you see.
Meet your father.
Kevin.
Hi.
Kevin.
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 Kevin. Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin.
Kevin.
Trusted advice for life.
Kevin, how's your mom?
So clearly, I hope you could hear all the sound, but the commercial is more about the moments in Kevin's life that Raymond James, as an investment company and a business manager of your experiences, and it is the focus of this ad, not about the services they offer. It's about the times in your life that they can support. And so we have this idea, I love this image, of a person who's a potential customer, your product, awesome person who can do rad things, rad stuff. This isn't what your business sells, is your product. It's this person doing rad things, powered by your ideas and your products, but it's about them. And this idea of switching, imagine from education, from about our textbooks or our videos, to the things that the person is doing with our textbooks and videos in our presentations, is a radical switch. Now, I'm a professor, so clearly I like to think that the product is me in what I say, but it's clearly my students and what they can do. And it's clearly those people who are leveraging the ideas that is the product of a talk. So this idea of thrive as opposed to content is about creating value in the world. Learning to thrive involves using what one is learning to create value. It involves starting with goal, not with content, and then positioning content as tools to realize personally meaningful and socially significant goals. So the content is what is hired for the person to make progress on their goals when we talk about a thrive learning construct. So thrive is a verb, and it's a verb about what our students are doing with our content, not what our content is. But importantly, when it comes to thrive, which is this idea of using my content in my life, it's a very different set of conditions that allows someone to take the risk and to be able to thrive. It involves more than just getting to the content. It involves building a sense of belonging as you connect with other people, as you inspire, support, and are inspired. And it involves esteem, being seen, valued, and validated for the progress and the successes that I'm making. This idea of supporting someone to thrive, if we include the ideas of belonging and esteem, and I'm very much drawing on Maslow's hierarchy, because I think thrive is about actualizing one's potential, and it's about transformation, not consumption. And if we believe that being able to thrive requires more than content, then we need to think radically differently about how our learning conditions supporting esteem and belonging, and how are we doing it in a place where they feel safe to learn. So moving beyond this idea of thrive as this verb about people doing in life as opposed to content that sits in a textbook or a video or the professor's words. Now let's talk about what kinds of frameworks will allow someone to engage thrive and support the safety. And what does it mean to have an invitational framework where you're starting with authentic motive of the person, not simply compliant behavior? You're using a platform framework where people are connecting to goals they care about, supported by others, and where anyone can create value, not simply the textbook, because we need to see examples of thrive in action, not the tools that people are going to use to create a potential action. And then this idea I've already indicated about thrive being a team sport, and a new target for design is connected growth with a focus on social interaction. So this idea that innovation as invitation, it's not about manipulating unmotivated brains or gamifying undesirable activities. It's about engaging authentic motive. And so we think a lot in our studio about not intervention, this thing that we have our content, the innovation, and we put it into someone. But we think deeply about how does our innovation create an invitation that people want to take up. And so this idea that people are hiring our innovation to make progress on goals they care about, it has to start with authentic motive. And that often is personal relevance or social relevance, not simply to get a grade. So when a learner starts on a learning journey where the focus is on them thriving, we think about it as she does so because she has a job to get done. And it should be driven by those goals, cued by personal and social relevance, not by the designer's funnel. So it's a very different notion that we organize an outline with key concepts underneath to help someone consume it. Now we're reorienting our entire learning apparatus around the goals that people want and how we can help them be successful in getting them. Oh my God. Okay. So continuing on. So reorienting content around jobs to be done means that the goal now is to help people make progress towards the goal or aspiration in a specific context and do so in ways that are personally relevant and meaningful. Individuals hire brands to accomplish goals in their life. So we've been really building to this idea of what Clay Christensen calls jobs to be done, this idea that learning should not be organized around content, but it should be organized around the progress that people need to make to be successful in discipline. So if we're teaching people about how to do scientific inquiry, we're reorienting content around what are all the different jobs that I need to understand in order to be successful in a scientific inquiry process. Each one of those jobs has a certain beat, a certain lifespan, a certain start and stop condition. And so we go out and we actually interview people around, hey, where was the first time you were successful in a scientific inquiry? And we start to identify all those moments, those occasions that were hired to help them be successful. And then we make those available as learning moments. And a lot of times when you interview people about, for example, where were you successful in getting your first job, you learn about occasions, not just about when I got my resume or I learned to have a constructive interview, but it's also about where I failed forward or where I picked up a mentor and all these moments that help them make some progress in that job. The other part when you're building these is the power of platform. Platforms facilitate interactions where anyone can benefit and anyone can contribute. Platforms allow consumers to be producers And platforms connect people to what matters to them. The important part is when you look at Uber, it's not about the company having all the content. It's about the connecting a driver to a driver. Airbnb is about looking for places where people have house, and they, as consumers, become producers, with the platform serving a role of connecting people and making the transactions easier and easier for them to get to the progress they want, get to the product they want to hire. YouTube, similar. eBay is another example. Now, when we're talking about thriving, we've already indicated it's not just about connecting, that there's about certain interactions that let people feel safe, that let people feel validated, valued, that position content in terms of particular goals. But so it's not so much about just connecting people to people, but it's about connecting people to content and to goals and to moments and to people that will help them be successful. So when we start to think about what would a digital learning approach look like, that's based on this platform, that's helping people thrive, that's connecting them to goals and others, we move away from this idea of person with potential to grow plus expert content equals person with knowledge. It does not. It equals person with knowledge, but not thriving. So we want to think about how we're connecting people around goals to other people to be inspired as they grow their skills, apply them, and share out what they're doing to serve as other people's connection. So a platform where people are seen, supported, valued, and validated for growth. So once you have this design that's connecting people, that's supporting them and growing, it's connecting people to goals, that's focused on this idea of creating value, we now need to think deeply about ecosystem integration. And what does it mean to take an innovation and position it in a form that people want to hire within a learning ecosystem, whether that's about professional development, in-school learning. We work with in juvenile detention centers, or you're in a situation where you're trying to help families be more successful. The key is that whatever you build, there is no technological fix. We need to allow in our technology some interpretive space so that people can make their own meaning, can leverage it for their goals, can enlist their context of use, enlist their passions and their motives. And that requires a little bit of breathing room in the technology. And then we need to think deeply about how we're empowering communities to support people in being successful, especially the local communities where we're integrating the innovations. A core construct in SFIS, in the School for the Future of Innovation Society, and how we think about technology is that the future is for everyone, but it's not about innovation plus access equals transformation. It's about innovation plus ecosystem integration equals local fidelity of transformation. So we think deeply about this concept called anticipatory governance. And that's this idea that you have an innovation, and to support powerful transformation, uptake, propagation of that technology, not just dissemination, but propagation, you need to facilitate engagement, foresight. Foresight is this idea is that I'm imagining what I'm going to do, and then help them be successful at integrating the ideas in your innovation with the imagined futures that people want to accomplish to be successful in making those happen on the ground. It's this idea of anticipating what I'm going to do, and that people are governing the relationship between the innovation and how it gets implemented in the world. And so I like to think about Fidelity 2.0 is how the innovation allows for local uptake and transformation. So the fidelity is with respect to the local person's goals, not to the designed internal bits and bytes of the innovation or the imagined use scenario. And so when we build, we draw a lot off, our team draws a lot off Randy Engel and some of Jim Greeno's work and Yuri Engstrom's work around expansive framing. This idea that I want people to enlist their goals, their passion, and the context where they'll use this. So it's really about how do we design the learning moment, the learning tools, so that people not just grab the content, but actually enlist their own passions in the context where they want to use as they're doing the learning and making sense of what this can do. So it's more than pushing out, it's also inviting the enlisting of an expansive framing. So we think a lot about interpretive space. When we're trying to design for interpretive space for anticipatory action, this idea of anticipatory governance, we have our enabling technology with our invested learners, our empowered network, and a supportive climate. And then the person in here is leveraging all of this context as they hire our technology to bring about outcomes that are meaningful to them in the world. Again, the ecosystem integration, the technology is right here, but there's many other parts if your goal is to produce outcomes that matter to them. And we need to think much more deeply than we often do about the uptake and the local empowerment and the authentic motive of our learners, allowing for them to be the true innovator as they take our ideas, imagine, and do the real hard work, the real innovation of integrating it to achieve outcomes in their community. And so the last beat I want to kind of bring up is our own kind of instantiation. We've been working really for the last 10 years, starting with kind of the power of games and using video games as a context for learning. But then kind of, and in that work, we really like the power of games because what you know, what you do, and who you become are also interrelated. But what we learned over time is that we can build these rich immersive worlds. We can embed you with authentic motive in a context that's giving you feedback. We don't have to list your own, we can put it right there. And we can give you feedback about why you're so great at what you're doing. So you bring together, you know, what someone does, what someone knows, and who they're becoming in a really powerful form. But what we found over decades of work in the games, I'm using games for learning and even for thriving, at least in the game world, is that what happens around the game and the relationships that people have with each other around how they're making sense of their learning journey within the game context is more important than what happens in the game. So we ended up slowly over time building more and more structures to support people making sense of what's going on in the game so they can help each other and grow. And that evolved into this kind of mobile first Thrivecast connected growth platform. Initially, again, it was kind of like the tail and the game was the dog, and now it's become the dog. And then sometimes we use a game as one modality of learning as people are seeking confidence and building skills to achieve goals they care about. We'll also talk about a little bit about connected growth and this idea, again, how do we design for authentic motive? So the Thrivecast platform, mobile first, was key because we wanted people to enlist it in their context. It's organized around learner goals. It's powered by personal desire, motivated by social connection, focused on value creation, shared through user stories, as people's stories of how they're using the ideas are becoming core to the platform, as opposed to the content that we put in there. With a feed, you really recommending people those ideas. Supported by a champion, we believe deeply that the learning process does require support from engaged champion, or often benefits incredibly. And then data analytics are so important. What's working, what's not, which stories are connecting to who, and how the system can leverage those ideas to improve its effectiveness. At the same time, we as researchers and designers can look across the platform and use scenarios to improve. The Thrivecast platform has this idea of connect to people and ideas that you find relevant with a feed on the front, select growth opportunities that are of interest to you, give and receive feedback to support community growth, grow skills to thrive and to inspire others, and then finish out growth in an area to level up your expertise. And so some of the core principles are, when we start learning in a module, in a growth invitation, we start with the goal. Or we start with you connecting to examples of other people who've already realized their goal and what it looked like for them in their context. Then we bring in the tools that help you grow your skills so you can achieve the goal. And then you apply and share your story back out of what you did. And then if it's accepted by your community, and if you feel comfortable, you can then use it as a story to connect to someone else's kind of beginning of their Thrive journey. We have this connected growth cycle, which I kind of walked through there, but it's this idea of connect, grow, apply, inspire, just to make it really strong. And it's partly motivated by this idea that people grow in the context of relationship as they interact and support and are supported by others. And it's really important that you're not just seeing other people's examples. At some point, part of belonging and part of seeing oneself as capable of thriving, using in the world, not simply knowing in front of a desktop, involves this idea that I am contributing and valued as other people connect and are inspired by my work. So it's more than just simply looking at other examples. We use algorithms. It's a really important part, a really big opportunity. If you're going to base learning not on these pipelines, go to this chapter, this chapter, this chapter, but on examples of what people are doing. You need algorithms that are going through what other people are doing, looking at what's relevant to what you're working on, and making recommendations to keep the motive authentic. So you're not just following the pipeline of learning activities by the desire. So we think a lot about different incentives. You have the designer relevance. These are learning goals based on, we'll talk about in a second, a jobs to be done methodology that's looking about what are the moments that people need to be successful in if they're going to be successful in this larger journey. We look at personal relevance, which is algorithms making recommendation to you. And then we have group pages that highlight social relevance, which, in spite of all our support on algorithms, all our work on deciding what do we put first, social relevance is really a motivator that really is driving people. Now, as they're getting closer and we want them to complete and earn their microcerts, then personal relevance can become powerful, or designer relevance. But social relevance really is the kind of the thing that starts the learning and the thing that keeps it going in an authentic form. But we really like to balance growth being structured, invited, and certainly owned. We also think deeply about not just where am I going with what I'm learning, but who's going to help me get there. So when you create an invitation for a group, we want to make it really easy for people to invite others to understand who they're learning with, and to keep the boundaries around that group very safe and intentional by the champion. But then also the learner can choose, do they want to share their final experience privately, just with their instructor, with their group, or with larger communities of which that group is connected. And we have lots of different kinds of groups that we support. Just taking one last step back, when we go into a new area and we want to learn about, for example, how someone gets a job, preparing people for career readiness, the first thing we like to do is journey map if we have that luxury, and not just take the content and put it online. And journey mapping is this idea where we go out, we interview people who have been successful in getting jobs, and we ask them almost as a story, tell me the first moment where you felt you had some success and were making some progress on getting your job. Tell me the next moment. And when we tell me that moment, talk about what was your motivation for going into that moment? What tools and resources did you hire? And then were you successful? And knowing what you know now, are there other tools that you could have hired that would have made you more successful? We then look at the commonalities across the different interviews, and we turn those into growth opportunities or invitations in the platform. So again, the growth opportunities, the modules are based on jobs to be done. But then we work with our champions to really think through, what is an authentic motive in your context? What are the ways we want to introduce? What should be the expectation? What's the closure? How do you build a culture where people are comfortable using I statements as they share their progress on a particular module? And then finally, again, using data to take what we've learned and use it to improve your local implementation and the product more generally. So kind of stepping back, the focus of this talk was to really think about a movement from consuming content to thriving in life, And part of the core was adopting an invitational framework. So it's this idea of moving from content consumption to value creation, from isolated learning to connected growth, and from designing technological fixes to empowered ecosystems. The top here, I would argue, is much more aspirational and respectful because it's based on this asset-based view of humans who we're trying to help amplify and invite them to bring out their strengths, as opposed to treating them from this deficit framework where we're putting content in to what's missing. So, we've kind of talked about this idea and we feel we've instantiated one, but I think the challenge is to think about growth platforms that focus on what people do, not what they need to know, that positions growth within managed groups where people learn from and inspire each other, that provides structures that allow people to be seen, valued, and validated for their efforts, that involves a balance of choice, goals, structure, and reward, that empowers anyone to adapt, modify, and design growth and to share their growth, and that use data and research to continually improve the content. So I think I'll stop there. And I thank you for taking the time. And I hope that there were ideas that you find useful in here. For me, it's been a really wonderful journey over the last multiple decades of thinking through how do we really invite people into the process of becoming. And what I've come to in all that is that learning has to be about creating value. It has to allow for my own unique expression, not simply consuming content, because human spirit deserves to shine, to flourish, to thrive. And to do so, one of the most beautiful gifts of being human and learning, and the need for learning, is to connect with others in that process. And if we can learn to support each other in manifesting our best selves, powered by these great ideas and learning, we can all move to a much more shared, supportive, and growthful context and planet. So thank you all and have a great day.